Hi, I'm Alex Newman with the New American Magazine, and today I want to talk to you about Betsy DeVos, the Education Secretary in the Trump administration. There's been a lot of praise for her from establishment conservatives and pseudo-conservatives. When Jeb Bush, the governor of Florida and failed presidential candidate, found out, he said she was an excellent pick and this was going to be fantastic, and a lot of people called her a very Jeb-like pick. And it's actually not surprising that people would think that. If you look at her track record, one of the things that she is really famous for up in Michigan is her involvement with an organization that played a key role in keeping Common Core in place. Now, I'm sure most of the viewers know this, but Trump campaigned on a platform of getting rid of Common Core. That was one of his claims to fame. We're going to repeal Common Core, we might shut down the Department of Education, and we're going to make education great again, right? That's what Trump told us. And Betsy DeVos may not have been the best person for that job. So why she was selected is not exactly clear. There's been speculation about whether it had to do with her family's huge donations to the Republican Party over the years, but she does have very strong links to members of the establishment, in particular Jeb Bush. She's given a lot of money to Jeb Bush's Education Foundation, and she even served on the board of his Education Foundation. And of course, Jeb Bush was one of the key players in the whole Common Core scam. And for those who have been living under a rock for the last 5 years, of course, Common Core are these monstrosity national standards, so-called, for education that just basically every real expert who's looked at this, including the rubber stamp experts they put on the Common Core Validation Committee, has said are terrible, terrible standards. It's going to be a disaster for education. So when she was announced, Team Trump put out a statement, and they addressed some of those concerns. They said that everybody who was joining the Trump administration agreed to implement his agenda, and they also said that they were going to get to work abolishing Common Core. But then they added a troubling little statement, and they said that they were going to get to work on higher national standards. So, for people who believe in the Constitution, that's a very problematic statement, right? You can search the Constitution all day and all night, and you'll never find a section that authorizes any involvement of the federal government in education, whether setting standards or anything else. So there's no authority to do this. That statement was eventually taken down, so we're not quite sure what that means. I followed up with one of DeVos's surrogates and didn't get much in the way of answers, unfortunately. So we'll have to see what happens. Her real big policy initiative, and this is something that Trump campaigned on, is the idea of school choice. A lot of conservatives and libertarian type people have come out in favor of this. The thinking is, competition is good. We know that in the free market, competition produces lower prices, higher quality, more variety, and that's pretty standard stuff. But when it comes to education, it's a little bit different, because when they say choice and competition, they're not talking about free market competition. They're talking about using federal tax dollars to provide so-called vouchers for children to be able to go to private schools, religious schools, and of course they want to set up charter schools all over the country as well. And on the surface, it might sound nice. There is some evidence that children who've gone to these charter schools in some cases have done better than kids in the standard public schools, which, as everybody knows, are just a total disaster at this point. But there's some real serious concerns too. Some of the big ones, the Federal Reserve did a study, and they found that when you have the development of this school choice, you tend to get a crowding out of real independent schools that don't take government money, and schools that teach the Bible, teach religious doctrines, that sort of thing. And you also tend to get churches becoming less religious when they start taking government money. And as it concerns the schools, there's a really big concern here. All the charter schools have to obey Common Core. They all have to obey the state and the federal regulations on education. So it's hard for an independent school to compete against a tax-funded private school. But there's a very big difference between the two, in that the independent school can do what it wants and the private school with government funding cannot. It must teach Common Core and it must obey all these regulations. So there's some really serious concerns here. We'll have to see what happens in the years ahead. There are efforts to abolish the Department of Education. In my opinion, that's a great idea. It's unconstitutional to begin with. We don't need it. We should shut it down. And actually, Trump said that on the campaign trail. He was absolutely right. But we'll have to see what comes out of this. So stay tuned to the New American Magazine. We'll be bringing you updates on this subject on a regular basis.